Hey, everybody, welcome back to Human. I'm Joe Klemczewski with Jeff Stucke. We're in our third session on the topic of love. And you, in your notes, Jeff, kind of hit a home run for me because this one is all about the guy's perspective. And let's get all Al Bundy married with children, old reference I know, and just pretend that it's always the guy's fault, at least for a moment, for my sake of introduction and tell me what guys do get wrong when they're looking at relationships and love and they think we're in this, we're co-equal, we're gonna foster this relationship. Where do we stumble and how compared to women?
Well, I think we need to map out a little bit because I think it's again with industrial and technological advancement, it's like, the circumstances that we find ourselves living in are it's just such a positively catastrophic change to where, comfort and security are we can take that for granted. Whereas even 100 years ago, 100 years ago, we're in the Great Depression, World War I, World War II, those kinds of things. Those things are not, and obviously previously to that. And so men being evolutionarily wired, for protector, provider, got that testosterone shit pumping through us. And so 100 years ago, conversations were significantly more consequential. What, okay, we survived today. What do we need to do to survive tomorrow? So you think about 100 years ago and prior to that, let's go back 200 years ago, however far you want to go back, the conversation of, hi, honey, how was your day? Wasn't that didn't happen. It was like, oh, you're still alive? Yes, I'm still alive. Cool. What do we need to do to make it through tomorrow? So those are those conversations are substantively different and infinitely more consequential. And so now we find ourselves in circumstances where for most of us, and I understand there's discrepancies in quality of life. You don't have to blow me up about that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on a macro level, most of us have comfort and security in a degree that most human beings throughout, our existence have not known. And so as men, we still are running that old software of when my wife comes to me, it's a survival problem that I need to fix, right?
100%.
And so then that gets labeled mansplaining, right? And so now it's not coming from, I'm not saying that there aren't people that are assholes. I'm not talking to the assholes right now. I'm talking to, the majority of us that are just trying really hard in relationship. It's like, okay, I'm mansplaining. Okay. And so now we feel this almost this sense of incompetence when it comes to the communication, like personal defectiveness. And so then what do? We become conflict avoiders. It's like, let's fucking avoid that conversation. For all of us, it's like, honey, we need to talk is like, fuck. Like that is, when we hear that, it's like time to go to the principal's office. And it it's it is important that we understand that this is an evolutionary lag, that the vast majority of men are not intending to mansplain. Now, we still have to correct that, right? We got to update our system. Like that's not when we're now in a new era of communication to where we can have nuanced conversations where understanding the other person's perspective, understanding the best part of their day, the worst part of their day, like that's a thing now. So we have to update that. And so we tend to vacillate between. So when you ask me the question, what do we tend to get wrong? Number one is we rush to fix, right? That's what we want to do. And it again, for the vast majority of men, it's not a patriarchal thing. It's not an oppressive thing. It's not a you're incompetent thing. You need me to mansplain life to you. It's none of that. It's this old software that gets triggered, and then all of the sudden I'm trying to fix something that she doesn't want fixed. So then what is my other option? Just to shut down. And then I approach the interaction from a position of incompetence. And then oftentimes that just is like capitulation. You're right, honey. You're right. I'm sorry. Yes. And so we kind of pivot back and forth between these profoundly flawed options that end up putting a lot of stress on the relational dyad.
Well, I feel like I need therapy again now after that introduction. Um, you just described the last 20 years of my life. Um, yes, the proverbial cliche fixer, everything to me is a problem and I'm a walking hammer. And it's reinforced by the fact that I've been a business owner and staff leader for so long. People bring me problems to fix. So I come home and that's the mode I'm already in. And I will say, man, just right on cue to your point about the antithetical correction, where now we just shut up. That's kind of why I literally kind of moved from just trying to shut up. Like that was my attempt at correcting that is just don't talk. And I'm talking all situations, all relationships, which is not a bad idea, pause and think.
Right.
But now I'm really engaged in a lot of Buddhist philosophy where I'm trying to retrain myself to just observe and be and the concept of peace and presence instead of just like fix everything is a problem that needs a solution. And it because it's so biological, again, the dopamine, the testosterone, it's just fucking difficult. Like it's really hard to do. So I'm kind of happy we're starting here. You mentioned in your notes besides protect or problem solve, there is that protect and provide. And I have a really interesting story. A friend of mine is a brand new parent, a little bit later in life. So he's not 20, like he's years beyond that. And as you know, male or female, mother or father, when you have a child, you become a different person. That's one of my favorite African proverbs. And I've seen him go through this, and he treats that child like around every corner is a saber-toothed tiger. Like he even made this post that was hyper toxic masculine. I'm gonna protect him. I'm gonna teach him how to take care of the world. Uh, and I'm like, and it just made me laugh because I'm like, yeah, we've all been there, your first month with your first child.
Right.
So again, speaking of evolutionary software, like, how do we put this all together in the modern era?
Well, we want to find a way for a man to be assertive, but in a constructive sort of way in this modern context, right? Because I think one of the things that men are really suffering from is this just sort of incompetent passivity. Like I just I don't know what to do, so I don't do anything, or I just chronically agree or chronically apologize. Or I would say I see that clinically, I see that probably 80% of the time. That's because most guys are good guys trying really hard. And so that's the vast majority of the time. There is, there is a proportion of that. I don't know, I'm making these statistics up about 10 to 15% that are still kind of that, bitch, if you just shut up and listen, I'd tell you how to live your life. But that is again a much smaller dynamic. And then and probably the 80%, that's probably most people are just under stress. The communication is just broken and the relationship is dying and they just don't know what to do with it. They stay in this avoidance posture until something comes up that has to be addressed, and then that tends to be polarizing, which gets them stuck in the power struggle, and then that whole system just gets polarized. So I would say that's probably the most prevalent with men, that passivity of men being a subset of both of those groups. And so when I work with men, it's like, okay, I got to get you back into an assertive posture, but not in a way that's shutting her down, like in a way that is, and so I'm a metaphor guy, and I think we've gone through this, but it's like, there's two kinds of growth, mechanical growth and organic growth. Mechanical growth is building a wall. You can build a wall as fast as you can build a wall. Organic growth is the way that a plant grows. And the number one thing that you do to make a plant grow is nothing. You just let it grow. And you have to prune it, you water it, you fertilize it. But those things have to be very proportionate or it'll kill the plant. And so that predisposition to problem solving, right, gives us a predisposition to mechanical growth, to find the problem, fix the problem, to find the problem, fix the problem. And so if I can get them to shift their orientation and okay, understand this new kind of growth, that we're we're trying to be responsive, not reactive. We're trying to co-create rather than just problem solve, those kinds of things. And so the conversation, when my partner says, "Honey, we need to talk," rather than me feeling like, "Shit, this is a quiz that I'm about to flunk," that okay, I can show up in that way. And I use this so much. You and I have talked about it multiple times on the podcast. I probably bring it up every fucking podcast because I think it's so useful. And that's the concept of seeking understanding, right? But using the dialogue to seek understanding. And I'm going to approach this conversation, and this helps reprogram that old software. When I commit, I'm sitting and I want to hear every word that my partner has to say, and I want to say it back word for word. That then keeps me, that's almost a form of meditation, right? It's like I'm anchored on the words that she's saying versus getting lost in my reaction to what she's saying. Either, oh, there's a problem I can solve, or now I'm starting to get defensive, or whatever that is. I'm just listening to hear and understand. That transition for us as men is so difficult because of that problem solving instinct, right? So it's either, oh, there's the problem that I can solve. So I just jump into the conversation and start, well, if you do this, you wouldn't have that problem. Or it's the defensiveness of that's wrong, I have to correct that. And so if I engage in this dialogue, I'm just listening to understand. I'm not agreeing with her. And that's hard because it feels like if she says something that's like, that's a problem, it's like, no, fuck, I got to fix that problem. Or if she'd only do this. And it genuinely, Joe, as you know, is compelled by love. It's not compelled by, some condescending view of the other person. And I think that's profoundly important. I think that's underemphasized in modern communication. It's like, it's more that men are just incompetent versus old operating system. And I think that needs to be punctuated because I think that affects the way that the man views himself. But then also think it affects the way that the woman looks at him, which starts, when I think you're incompetent, then I start to have feelings of contempt towards you. I'm superior to you. If you were as good as I was, we wouldn't have this problem. And that's terminal to a relationship. As Gottman talks about, once contempt is in the system, it's really hard to get contempt out of the system. Once someone has appointed themselves as the moral or intellectual superior in the relationship, the old saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely, it's hard to get that out of the system. So if I'm coming and I'm all I want to do is hear what I heard you say. This is what I heard you say. Is that what you wanted me to hear? And the other thing is, Joe, I think we have insanely unrealistic expectations about how simple communication should be. We are complicated motherfuckers. you know, and so when two of the most complex organisms sit down and try to understand each other, it's a wonder more things don't go wrong than they do. But it's like there's so many complexities. The number one complexity is my partner has been thinking about this problem. They've already got this thing like dialed the fuck in, and I'm taking a pop quiz. And so for me to sit down into that circumstance void of defensiveness is damn near impossible. And so this idea that we should just sit down, we should both be in the same emotional space, we should both be in the same psychological space is just an absurdity. It's an absurdity. And so the first couple of passes at the communication are really just to align our emotional and psychological energy. Okay, now we're both present with each other. And so the way that, again, going back to organic, right? We're not doing mechanical, we're doing organic. This is what I would consider pruning the plant. And pruning a plant has a consequential point of diminishing return. Most people over prune. Most people over prune. They cut the fucking thing. They're just, it becomes complaining and feet and all of this kind of stuff. And it's like, ain't no plant left. I don't know if that thing's going to grow or not.
That's what I was almost hearing you say between those two, the brick wall and the plant. I was waiting for that pruning example to come in because that is applying a mechanical force or interaction to the plant, and so you can definitely overdo that. I really, when you were talking there, started to see a connection also between the protector role and the problem solver, linked a little bit more intrinsically, because I think that's the essence of problem solving. Some people, or we can just choose not to consider something a problem, like that's an option. But when you are in that high testosterone role, we always seek problems. Like we're trying to level the field before there's even a problem, just to make sure there are no problems. So everything looks like a problem preemptively to us. And that's another thing I've been trying to do in understanding Buddhist philosophy. I'll give you a little example that I think is at least close to tangential. I have a 5-year-old grandson who I love and spend a lot of time with. Just love that little guy to death. Yesterday on the gym floor, he loves to just wrestle. He's just this age where he wants to be physical and wrestle, and it's kind of the playing like this. You gotta let him win sometimes. I gotta let him put me in a chokehold and choke me out, and because that gives him the motivation to
Sabotage,
keep
right?
going. But there was something about him yesterday where he was like just feigning injury. He was complaining a lot. And I just made this little offhanded comment like, "You're a little whiny tonight." And as soon as I said it, I'm like, "Oh, why'd you say that?" And I could see like just almost a startled look on his face. Like, I don't think grandpa's ever said anything to me that's not been kind and like encouraging. And it just like was a punch to his gut. And of course, Tracy was right there. So now I've heard about it 17 times in the last 24 hours. And so I already feel bad enough. And even today, in my own head, I'm thinking, what would have been a better way to use a positive reinforcing, of a behavior, just something other than just that shitty little comment. I didn't say something harsh. I didn't say something overtly bad, but it wasn't positive.
Right.
And so the second part of my story is I brought it up to Tracy tonight. And I said, by the way, I've been thinking about this. And like, first of all, thank you for pointing that out. Like, that was a really bad move, not what I want. So thank you. Whereas, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, I would have been like wanting to, verbally challenge her. Like, what, like, dude, just leave me the fuck alone. Like, we've already talked about this 16 times. So anyway, I think there's a little bit of growth there and just recognizing it, but that's an example of that operating system. Here I am in this relationship with somebody I love, my grandson, and for what I think is a positive outcome, like I just don't want him to become this participation trophy, like I'm just the whiny victim, LeBron James flopping every time somebody comes within 5 feet of you kind of guy. So like you said, the intent was good. Outcome, not great.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things I'm applying this, this is an interaction between you and your grandson, but like in couples, like one of the things for couples and for men, it's subtle, but it is powerful, and it's hard to get them to adopt it, but it's always ask, never tell. So if I sense that my partner is in a bad mood, right? Ask, don't tell. Tell is, you're in a bad mood tonight. Let me know how that goes out for you. You know, but it's like if I put that in passive voice where I'm like, hey, are you okay tonight? You don't seem like yourself.
What a
And
powerful difference. What a
it
powerful difference.
yeah, I mean, just totally different. And such an easy rule, just ask, don't tell. And it's one of those things that it's oftentimes, people are like dismissive of the simple, but it's like the simple is always the better. The other thing that I think is important, in the 60s, the reference of male orientation went from, well, I'm going to go to what was adopted was aggression. What it was, the reference before that was challenge seeking. And I think the shift from challenge seeking to aggression was catastrophic. It was catastrophic. And because one, it's challenge seeking is more precise, right? And more consistent with, and you said it so eloquently, like we're wired to go find the problem as soon as we possibly can, not wait for it until it's like at our door. And that's a very different thing than aggression. And aggression then puts all of that oftentimes protective behavior, you know, in this negative connotation. And so I appreciated your distinction in that. And it's the accurate right term is challenge seeking. We are challenge seeking. That's why we want new things. We want to start a business. We want to go do that. I mean, we're looking for challenges. So that's exactly right. When men can make these nuanced changes, right? Now I can approach communication assertively. And this is what's so critical for me is that when my partner says, honey, we need to talk, I feel ready. I feel ready. Great. Let's talk. I've got realistic expectations. I'm just seeking to understand. It's probably not going to happen first, second, third time. But I'm committed. I'm going to stay assertive, challenge seeking in the process. All I want to do right now is understand you. That's the only thing that I want to do. Now, I'm still in my organic, make sure I don't shift back to mechanical, organic. And it's like once my partner, two things need to be true at the same time. I understand and she feels understood. And I make that distinction because oftentimes men stop at the first criterion. I get it already. I get it. Like, geez, like, versus hearing her say, I still don't feel understood. And so I'm committed to both of those propositions. I truly want to understand. And just as importantly, I want my partner to feel understood. Do you feel understood? Do you feel like I'm getting what you want me to get? Okay. Now we're pruning. Okay. When we get to that point, we're fucking done. Walk away, hug, go have sex, get ice cream. I don't give a shit. You fucking stop right there.
See, yeah, you hit me with that 10 years ago in therapy. And I feel like that's still my thing, primarily because of just a high level of conscientiousness. I can't leave anything unresolved. And so, yes, I'm trying to learn that lesson as well. But I do feel like bringing women a little bit more into this conversation, I'm interested to hear because of some of those software update challenges, women are playing a 50-50 role in this in terms of how they bring themselves to those situations and recognize them and have some self-awareness and how they may adapt to modern life. So far left and far right socio-political views are each going to have problems with some of the things we say. Like we're we're going to piss one of them off every other sentence in a topic like this. So just
Largely just because they're looking to
well,
be pissed
yeah.
off.
So prepared to be pissed off
So
with
there you go.
this part of the conversation. I have often noted when I have male friends in heterosexual relationships and marriages, if they are too passive, too beta, as some on the right may say, I always think in the back of my mind, you're on thin ice because women often say, yes, I want somebody who's kind and understanding and emotionally generous, but you still you you still want somebody who can solve problems when you want them solved and be protected when you need protection. So talk about that dynamic in today's world.
I will tell you that since you brought that up, the pendulum swung far for women to be more assertive and men to know their place. And it was almost that ambiguous, Joe. It was not like there was a, you know, more concrete set of ground rules. It's like, okay, I need to let her be assertive because I want her to feel assertive. I want her to feel competent, whatever those kinds of things are. And so then kind of the reflexive response to that was men becoming increasingly agreeable. Sure, honey. Yes, honey. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. You're right. That sort of thing. That thing had a short shelf life. I mean, everybody got frustrated really fucking fast. And again, I would correlational, and this is anecdotal. I've not researched it, but from a timeline, as that communication shifted that far, we did also see a skyrocketing in the divorce rate.
I was just going to say that. I mean, even before you brought it up, that was I saw that as well.
Yeah, and there, what I have experienced, and I've worked with women. I've done. I have a colleague out in Denver, and she works with women exclusively. We've done a lot of work together. We've done research together, and she leads a lot of women's groups, and we'll co-lead and talk about, male-female relationship dynamics, those kinds of things. And this is an oversimplification, but the number one thing that women complained about was, I wish he was more assertive.
Isn't that amazing? After all of that structural familial change that we thought was for the better. And that's what I said. You brought it up at the very beginning of our conversation. being assertive without being dominant, being assertive without being overbearing. And it sounds like if you can just define those terms, name it to tame it. If you can just say, okay, I got it. There's a continuum and there are some lines here. I think most people can get that. And I find even in my own relationship, as I started trying to just kind of shut down and stop being assertive at all, and then I saw that not work. Now I think I know maybe strategically where Tracy wants somebody who can just make the decision and be assertive in this way versus always just try to say we're co-equal in everything. Every decision, every conversation has to be this. There are sometimes, I guess, male or female, we just want the other person to make a decision, but I do really see that a little bit toward the male side, but I would ask you for kind of anthropological confirmation.
Well, I would tell you, Joe, that it that shift in the direction towards women more being more assertive, that sort of thing. That was so pervasive in our social ethos that it reset people's expectations, but it was not representative of their own desires. And I very intentionally try to have couples to like, look, forget about social expectations. What do you want it to look like in you two's relationship? Like, let's have a candid conversation about how assertive you want him to be, about those kinds of things. Even, I mean, this one couple, they use the word Kodiak when he's not being assertive enough. And, he's an assertive dude. He doesn't have a problem. He's like, I'll fucking crush anything. He's that kind of guy, but he's kind of stuck in that. Again, coming from a very loving place, I don't want her to feel oppressed. I don't want her to feel.
Right.
And so it's become this like really beautiful little nuance in their relationship that now I'm not saying that that's the only time that he's assertive because he's done what you've done as well. Okay, I need to pay closer attention and start reading that myself and finding those places. But then she also has a mechanism to be able to say, just do this. I don't like this is not a time for you to like restrain yourself. And that's become a cool little part of their relationship that's really added a lot of positive energy to their relationship.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna say there are no more than a handful of points where this becomes a conflict, and I know like the initiation of sex is a big one, like where you're assertive or not, and who's waiting on who. And then maybe there are some trite examples, like nobody ever wants to pick where we're going to dinner. And so I don't want to be the one who makes the bad choice, and then my spouse doesn't like it. I mean, you go from super, super central and important to that peripheral.
Right.
But I'm going to guess you kind of on a case by case basis get couples to learn that language like Kodiak. Like, hey, this is a time I need the bear. Like, I need the grizzly bear to come out and take over. Like how do you do that for everybody?
It, there, it's just not a one size fits all. And if I were going to give some, advice at scale, it's like be more aware of that and allow you and your partner to define your own exceptions to some of these social norms and do that together. And it can be an incredibly like just learning process. Like, oh shit, I didn't know that fucking frustrated you. Like, no problem. That'll never happen again. And but then also feeling like it just increases the trust, particularly when he doesn't have to feel so in conflict about being assertive oh, these are the spaces where I can just take control and she feels good about that. Here's where I need to be a little bit more sensitive. And then at times she just says, hey, go, like do your thing, like be assertive. And it really becomes a fascinating little, just like beautiful dance. It's like when you see classic ballroom dancing, at its finest, you have no idea who's leading. Because no one is. It's such perfect responsiveness to each other that it's like that's the ultimate goal of the marital relationship, right? We have so much conversation about leading and that kind of thing. It's like, okay, yeah, to get the ball rolling, somebody has to lead. But really, our ultimate goal is that couple that just senses each other so perfectly that it's just, it's simpatico. Like there's no, it's just this perfect energy moving together. And that's the ultimate goal for the relationship.
So I have an example of that to put another feather in your therapist cap. So I can
I will get it
this
ready.
this is like I could write the forward to your next book. This is a little bit of a role reversal because I remember you even working with Tracy on this individually in therapy, but she is such a almost by default trad wife for the reason that she had a super oppressive, neurotic mother. So at 30, 40, 50 years old, like Tracy still is afraid to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, and she just would rather be demure. And so I had to almost teach her it's okay to stand up to me. Like if I deserve to take a punch, then take the punch, like she did with Truett, in my saying something, off-putting. This is the funniest example you'll probably ever hear because it's the opposite of most spouses. I have become so excited because after 35 years of marriage, she will finally buy shit and not ask me. Never happened before. 35 years. I'll come home and there's a package here, or I'll see a charge on the credit card. I'm like, what's that? Dude, that would have never happened the first 35 years. She'd be like, oh, can I get this? I'm like, of course you can. Why are you fucking asking me? Like, why would you ask? But she felt she had to. And now she feels so much more like a complete partnership. It's amazing. Like that was something I wanted, and now she has grown in assertiveness. So I do feel that dance step is way more co-equal and just I think it's attractive on both sides.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, that's like, I think I'll say it, you may want to edit this part out, but it's like Christians fuck up so much about the Bible, and it's like the idea of unequally yoked. And unequally yoked is just it's so beautiful because it's so perfect because, in an agrarian culture, you were totally dependent on the ox. And for you to be at maximum efficiency, you had to have two ox pushing on the yoke equally with equal force. Otherwise, one ox is going to break the other ox's neck. And that's it. What a beautiful fucking metaphor. It's so perfect for, but like Christians say, it's, I, Christians
Yes, we
shouldn't
know.
marry
We've
non
already done that podcast.
whatever. Okay, so anyway, but it's just, but it's that same idea that both equally pushing our relationship in the same direction with this just perfectly unified force, and yeah, that's when marriage comes to life, right?
Yeah. So you also, in your notes, you had some different, surprise, surprise, metaphors. The candle, the fortress, the lighthouse, the Mr. Rogers archetype. Do you want to go into those in terms of how we should maybe handle some of these situations?
I can. We've covered them, but like the candle is just it's your wife's energy just so easily blows you out, right? And it's like you just shrink. And that ain't sexy. I mean, just her just blowing your flame. I mean,
Just
that's
fall
not
over.
right. The fortress is just unapproachable. It's like it's that old school. It's just like, I'm not going to engage in any meaningful way. I'm mechanical growth. I'm finite game. I'm right, you're wrong, game over. It's that approach. The ultimate, metaphor, right, is the lighthouse. It's 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 a beacon of light that can withstand any external force. And I think that's such a beautiful metaphor for what a man should be in a relationship. Whatever energy you have, bring it to me. I, I'm I can withstand it. I will help us stay focused on seeking understanding. I'm fully engaged, assertive, and so ultimately that's how I want to show up in the relationship, is that when there is relational stress, I'm the lighthouse that keeps us from just, you know, going upshore. And and it if a man can view it that way, I'm 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 here for my wife. I can absorb her energy and stay present. I think that puts us back into a position of assertive strength where we need to be.
Yeah, and it reminds me again of another Buddhist proverb. If anything, if you allow anyone to make you angry, you've given them power over yourself. I kind of extrapolate that into other areas, like if you allow anything to make you angry or pick your dysregulated emotion, then that thing has power over you. So I love that part of the lighthouse where you can absorb anything, you can withstand any force, and you're fine. Because that's, again, not easy for a problem solver, protector looking for predators, to
Right.
annihilate. Like you instantly, like, your brain stem takes over, and your final point, which is just wait, like, as soon as you hear that problem or you perceive there is a problem to be fixed, let a pause go by and think if some of these Stucky truisms can come into your brain and save you from making a stupid reactive comment.
And ultimately, Joe, we want to get back to where the place where we're initiating the pruning, right? Or not afraid of initiating the pruning. Like we're able to sit down with our partner and say, "Hey, let's talk about our relationship. Let's make sure that there's nothing bothering you, there's nothing bothering me. Let's make sure that everything's just as it should be." Then and then once we have that conversation, then I feel like we've grown from having this conversation. Let's celebrate that let's go have sex. Let's go, you know, cheers with a glass of wine that we're taking care of our relationship. And that then becomes assertive energy in the relationship that's moving us forward in that same direction.
Do you recommend, even when things are going well, having specific intervals or processes for conversations like that?
Yep. I always, every couple, I start them out once a week. Depends on how much crisis they're in, but typically it's once a week. You sit down and you have that conversation. The parameters are set a timer that 20 minutes maximum, that we're going to talk about our relationship. We're not going to take anything personal, and we're not going to punish each other. So you get to be open and honest. I get to be open and honest. And this is an attempt to make our relationship better. And then when the timer goes off, we stop. And that's imperative, because the problem with conflict in marriage is it's a system that doesn't have a brake. And it's a car. going down the road 200 miles an hour with no brake. And there has to have a break to where we need to stop or we're going to keep picking up speed until we lose control. And that being the couple recognizing that together, this is a good place to stop. Let's do something to reconnect, and then we'll pick this up later. So, this process of doing this once a week builds that into muscle memory within the relationship. And then I recommend them from there. You find your right cadence. If it's obviously in the event of an emergency, break glass and do it then, but find your cadence of this feels good. Some couples are once a month. It's like, let's sit down and let's check in, and that feels right. And it keeps it in the consciousness of our relationship. We don't start forgetting about it, those kinds of things. So once it's familiar and safe, and we feel like we have some level of mastery over the process, then we kind of decide together what the proper cadence is for our relationship.
Speaking of cliches, I mean, it is such a therapy mantra that's made fun of all the time. Like the whole like mocking a therapist, like, oh, tell me more. Well, how do you feel about that? But
So
it makes me think of the David Brooks book. I think it's called How to Know a Person. And he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, phenomenal guy. And that book rocked me because it made me realize how horrible I am as a conversationalist. I mean, it rocked me. I watched probably 5 or 6 interviews of him talking about the book. I read the book. I bought the book for other people. And I'm like, I still fucking suck at this. Um, and part of it is I don't know why. I mean, because I'm an introvert by nature, but then in a conversation, I become over animated and maybe over responsive. And it's just easy to forget to just be present. And going back to that phrase, emotionally generous, like just, you wrote a couple things down, like a default response. That sounds really hard. Tell me more, which is very therapy-ish. But I'm like, that would work. Like, I mean, what you said earlier in our conversation, just reversing something from a declarative into a question. Wow, are you doing okay today? Like, it seemed like that's not easy for some of us.
yeah.
How do
Yeah.
we fix that, Jeff? I have a problem. I need you to fix it.
Well, here's what I think has to happen, and just kind of synthesizing is that as men, we have to understand that we're not incompetent. It's a skills deficit. It's not miswired at the factory, because the men that I work with, so many of them are just just shrouded in self-defeat. It's just like, I suck at this. That sort of thing, versus, and so they're no longer in an assertive posture. And so it's you can do this, man. It's some tweaks. We got to tweak some things. But once we tweak those things, then I need that assertive energy back. And then, the tweaks that we've talked about tonight, and it's like, I can do that, and I can do that assertively, and I can do it assertively and see my partner respond positively to it. And then that's the dance where you can't tell who's leading and because it's two people feeling each other's energy and responding perfectly. That is the process. That's the process. And it's simple, not easy. I mean, I've done this long enough. I'm not saying that what we've described tonight is the only way, but I will tell you definitively it's a way that works.
I feel like we may have mentioned this in the last episode of our topic of love, but I'm going to get this middle one wrong. The phrase, maybe it's a Stoic phrase, maybe it's from somebody you could quote. Before you say something, before you respond, ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it true? This one I'm not sure about, is it helpful maybe? And the last one I know, is it necessary? Because to me, that's the sledgehammer.
Yes.
If I can completely take that 3 second pause or 1 second pause, and before I respond to anybody, if I can just cycle to that last one, is this necessary? Probably 75% of the time, I could just save the words and save misunderstandings and overreactions and whatever.
Yeah. And I have the one that it's a Buddhist, it's kind of the Buddhist checklist. Is it true? Number one. Number two is it helpful? Number
Okay.
three, is it kind?
Mm,
And then is it necessary?
gotcha.
And again, nuanced thing, but it just but that's I still have to use that checklist, because
But
I'm
if
like
we
you,
do,
I'm Sledgehammer, Hulk must
yeah,
smash, and
but if we do that in our marriage, in our relationships with significant others, again, it's the courtesy we would give to our neighbor or a coworker, but then when you're in these very intimate relationships, for some reason we feel the license to go beyond. And if you just restrained yourself to that, is it kind? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? I mean, I'm pretty sure like everything we've talked about in these three episodes would probably resolve themselves.
I'm pretty sure, yes.
We could have just led with that and saved everybody 3 hours.
Yeah, probably so, but our egos would not allow it. I mean, we had to like gratuitously stroke our own egos for a little bit and then bring it to that crescendo.
Okay, well, for my social psychology prompt for this week, homework for everybody. I mean, I'm kind of stealing it from you, but it is that pause. I mean, you sent me 3 pages of notes, and your very last sentence, that sounds really hard. Tell me more. That under the 3 second rule. I think everybody should practice that until you become so self-aware you almost can't open your mouth without thinking that thought. Is this phrase as a question? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Is it necessary? I mean, I'm gonna try really hard to do that myself.
Yes, I would say assertively seek understanding. I want 1A, I want to understand. 1B, equally as important, I want you to feel understood. And then for men, I would add this is is there anything that you need from me right now? Making yourself available to provide for them anything that they may need, but not asserting that on them.
That
And
is that is profound, dude.
well, yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, that is hyper assertive but kind. Taking the lead in saying in this moment of potential crisis communication or just sorting to an understanding point, is there anything you need from me? Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that I can explain? Just like that's a leadership role. That's assertive as hell.
yes,
But from literal love.
it's the way of Mr. Rogers. Yes.
See, that's you do need to write some books. You need to start getting some of this shit down. I'm gonna be like who did that with Phil Stutz? Who was that actor?
Jonah.
Yeah, he literally made him do this Netflix special, and like what a gift, right? To
Oh, yeah.
make talk about making Phil feel like his whole life was worthwhile. I'm gonna be that guy for you.
Well, let's get busy. Let's
We're gonna
go.
get some shit out there.
All right, man.
Okay, everybody, you guys hope this was helpful. We will see you next time in Human. Thank you, Jeff. See everybody next time.